The story begins with an author named Osamu Dezai walking toward a river with a woman by his side. Upon reaching the river, Osamu deems it the perfect spot for their planned double suicide, and the woman agrees. They tie themselves together with a red string, believing this will ensure they remain together even in the afterlife. Just as they are about to jump into the river, a truck suddenly appears and hits them, teleporting Osamu to another world. Upon regaining his bearings, Osamu wonders if he has reached the afterlife, noting the Western-style surroundings. An elven priestess named Annette approaches him and explains that this is not the afterlife. She introduces herself as a guide for those who descend upon this world and tells him that he has been transported to a different world called Zauberberg, where he has been chosen to become a hero destined to bring light to this realm. Osamu is stunned by this turn of events, lamenting that he failed in his double suicide and ended up in a strange place instead. Annette observes that he seems to understand his situation, but he confesses that his life has been full of shame. As Annette tries to explain his mission, she notices that Osamu has poisoned himself and is near death. Quickly, she uses her skill called Purifying Light to detoxify him. Osamu, however, tells her she didn't need to save him and asks her to leave him alone. Annette insists that he is meant to be a hero and fulfill a great mission. Osamu dismisses her concerns, stating that he doesn't care about any mission and continues to casually consume poisonous pills, expressing his desire to find a place to die. Annette, bewildered, asks why he would want to die after being chosen by this world. Osamu retorts that he never asked to be chosen. Annette inquires if he encountered a truck, which Osamu confirms. Relieved, Annette explains that the truck he encountered was the Otherworld selection truck, responsible for bringing him to this world. She elaborates that the truck selects people leading unhappy lives in their old world and transports them to another world, offering them a fresh start. If the truck came for him, it indicates he was unhappy in his previous life. She congratulates him on being given this chance. This angers Osamu, who explains that the truck interrupted his double suicide, which he considered the happiest moment of his life. Annette is taken aback, and Osamu asserts that she has no right to decide what constitutes happiness for someone else. Annette, puzzled by his reaction, thinks that once Osamu sees his stats, he might change his mind. Annette explains that every human brought to this world is granted superhuman abilities. However, she soon notices that Osamu is exceptionally weak. His level is 1. He has only a single health point and no magic at all. His stats screen is colored red, indicating he is on the verge of death. She realizes he is still poisoned despite her detoxification efforts and suspects a system error, as no one should be this weak. She searches for any special skills he might possess, but finds nothing. This is the first time she has encountered such a weak otherworlder. Osamu then tries to leave the church, but Annette stops him, stating that he might have been brought to this world by mistake. She tells him that he doesn't have the ability to survive here, and Osamu, agreeing, mentions that he is branded a failure no matter which world he is in. Annette apologizes for the mistake and asks him to stay at the church for a while, as he is too weak to survive on his own. She warns that he will be killed the moment he steps outside, but Osamu tells her not to worry about him, as he is just looking for a suitable place to die. As he tries to leave, Annette reflects on how different he is from other heroes she has guided. She recalls her initial pride in guiding otherworlders, but over time, she became disillusioned, merely flattering arrogant and pretentious heroes. Osamu, however, is different. She tries to stop him again, suggesting that he at least choose a profession before leaving. Osamu insists he doesn't need to as he is a born author. He then leaves the church, and Annette feels that he is the man she has been waiting for her whole life. The scene shifts to Osamu standing at a checkpoint, unable to read a single word written there. He realizes he won't find a cafe around here. Suddenly, he hears a voice in his head informing him that he has discovered a landmark called the Great Plains of Estern. gaining 5 experience points. Osamu, suffering from migraines, asks the voice to stop speaking directly in his mind. The voice, however, announces that he has risen to level 2. Osamu, feeling overwhelmed, hears a girl screaming in the distance. He goes to investigate and finds a cat girl trapped by a monster called a death tree. The girl pleads for help, explaining she will be killed if he doesn't act. Osamu, noticing her oddly shaped ears, muses about the allure of dying women. The girl, desperate, asks if he has any weapons or spells, but Osamu is soon captured by the death tree as well. Hanging from the tree, the girl calls him useless. Osamu smiles, saying they don't have much longer to live, and the girl blames him for their predicament. She explains that death trees have a suction skill that steals life force, and they will both die in a few minutes. Osamu, excited by the prospect, asks if she feels the same. The girl, perplexed by his demeanor, tells him to not give up as he begins to feel weak. As the tree sucks the last of his life force, Osamu rides in pleasure, but he soon stops responding. The girl, fearing the worst, accepts this place as her grave. Suddenly, the death tree begins to rot, starting from the branch holding Osamu. In moments, the entire tree rots and breaks, releasing both of them. The girl, confused, realizes Osamu's poison must have killed the tree. The voice in Osamu's head announces that his poison dealt 300 points of damage to the death tree, raising him to level 3. The girl, impressed, asks if he poisoned himself on purpose, suspecting he pretended to be weak. Osamu lights a cigarette, explaining that every time he tries to die, something like this happens. He reveals that he has attempted suicide 5 times, but it has never gone as planned. The girl, not understanding his depression, is nonetheless grateful she survived and thanks him. She invites him to her place to properly thank him, asking his name while holding his hand. Osamu notices the red string on his hand and thinks about Sachin, the girl he tried to commit double suicide with. Ignoring the cat girl, he resolves to find Sachin, believing she must be in this world too since they were hit by the truck together. He declares that his new purpose is to find Sachin and attempt double suicide again. Meanwhile, back at the church, Annette prays to the gods, asking them to protect Osamu and let her meet him again someday. Osamu enters the church with Annette feeling relieved to see him again, but her curiosity is piqued by the presence of another girl with him. Osamu promptly explains that he has a question for her. He is searching for a woman named Sachin and asks if Annette knows where he might find her. Annette is taken aback by the fact that Osamu is now looking for yet another woman. The scene then transitions to Osamu and the cat girl standing in the plains outside the church. Osamu admits to himself that he has no idea where to find Sachin. The cat girl, trying to cheer him up, assures him that he will eventually find her. She suggests that since they have a long journey ahead, they should stop by the castle town of Wrath on their way to her place. As she attempts to lead Osamu by the hand, Annette intervenes, stopping her from holding his hand in public. The cat girl questions why Annette decided to join them in the first place. Embarrassed, Annette quietly gazes at Osamu, and the cat girl quickly deduces that Annette is in love with him. Annette, flustered, insists that her motives are not impure, and that she simply has a responsibility to protect this weak otherworlder. Surprised, the cat girl remarks that Osamu is an otherworlder, which, she believes, explains his strength. Annette is confused by this, as she knows Osamu is supposed to be weak, which is why she feels obligated to stay with him. The cat girl clarifies that Osamu killed a death tree with a single attack and saved her life. Annette feels devastated upon learning that Osamu and the cat girl have already formed such a close bond that he saved her life. She grows angry at the cat girl. At that moment, they both notice Osamu lying in a coffin. He tells them that he plans to sleep in it for a while and asks them to wake him up when they arrive at the city. He wishes Annette and Tama a good night. The cat girl tries to correct him, saying her name is not Tama. but Osamu is already asleep. Annette, feeling smug, takes satisfaction in the fact that Osamu only addressed her by the correct name. She then drags the sleeping Osamu towards the city, leading the cat girl to question whether Annette is truly a clergywoman. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a princess sits with a forlorn expression on her face. Afterwards, we see Tama and Annette struggling to pull a heavy coffin containing Osamu. Tama, frustrated with the weight, shouts at Osamu to come out and walk on his own. Receiving no response, she wonders if he is dead. Annette checks his stats and finds that his single hit point HP is still intact, reassuring Tama that he is merely resting. Tama tells Annette to watch her phrasing and scolds her for calling her by her name. Inside the coffin, Osamu thinks about Sachin and wishes to find her to commit double suicide together. The scene shifts to them arriving in town, where they wake up Osamu. As he sees the otherworldly town, he thinks it isn't so bad. Annette suggests they go to the castle to have an audience with the king. They head to the castle, leaving the coffin behind, which causes curiosity among the townspeople. Later, they meet the King of Wrath, who introduces himself as Thomas, and his daughter Charlotte. The king invites them to rest in the castle's bedchamber for the night. Tama and Annette praise the king for his kindness, but he mentions he has a condition for their stay. The king explains that he loves hearing stories from travelers and asks them to share pleasant memories from their journeys. Osamu, with a menacing look, asks if the king would like to know how it feels to sleep in a coffin. The king, frightened, wonders if he is being threatened. Annette quickly changes the subject by complimenting the princess's beauty, and the king reveals she is getting married soon. The king then asks for their advice on whom his daughter should marry. Two men are brought into the throne room: Gomez, a valiant knight, and Otto, a minstrel known as the Voice of Love. The king explains that due to increased monster activity influenced by the wrathful Dark Lord, he is too old to deal with the threat himself. Therefore, he has decided that one of these two men will marry his daughter and become the next king. However, Charlotte has yet to choose between them. The king asks for their advice on this critical choice. Osamu bluntly states that he has no idea and criticizes the king for asking travelers to decide such an important matter. He calls the king a tyrant for ruling his daughter's life and declares that he is not even fit to be a king. Osamu then tries to leave, stating that he has no right to speak since he feels unworthy of living in any world. Annette and Tama apologize on his behalf, explaining that Osamu is an otherworlder and doesn't understand how this world works. The king, surprisingly understanding, forgives Osamu after learning of his otherworldly origins. Later that night, Osamu struggles to sleep in their room. Annette wakes up and asks if something is troubling him. Osamu reveals that he never sleeps well. Annette hesitantly asks about Sachin, but Osamu remains silent. She then notices a tail sticking out from his sheets and finds Tama sleeping on his thighs. Annette wakes the shameless cat with a punch to the gut, questioning how she can casually sleep on a man's thighs. Tama angrily explains that she was just feeling cold and followed the natural instincts of her species, leading to more bickering between the two. Osamu leaves the room to escape the incessant bickering between Tama and Annette, wandering around the castle until he encounters the princess gazing solemnly at the beautiful lake scenery. He strikes up a conversation, remarking on the lovely view. She agrees, and he darkly muses that the tranquil lake makes him want to drown himself. The princess, bewildered, asks if he is truly so troubled that he wishes to end his life. Osamu replies that she appears more troubled than he is and inquires about her worries. She confides in him about her dilemma in choosing between Gomez and Otto. She explains that Gomez, though a recent addition to their castle, has quickly become their most dependable soldier, earning her father's trust and being a sensible choice for the future of the kingdom. However, Otto, her childhood friend, has always been there for her, singing songs to lift her spirits. Unsure whom to choose, she feels torn between duty and affection. Osamu empathizes, sharing that his life has been a continuous series of troubles, marked by multiple suicide attempts and great inconvenience to his family. However, he emphasizes that he never asked anyone else to decide his fate. He advises the princess to listen to her own desires and make a choice based on her heart, then leaves her to ponder his words. The next day, Osamu and his companions are summoned for another audience with the king. The king announces that Charlotte has finally made her decision regarding her marriage. He asks them to witness her choice. Annette thinks Gomez would be best for the kingdom's future, while Tama prefers Otto, believing he is a better match for the princess. Before they can start arguing, the king instructs Charlotte to stand before her chosen suitor. To everyone's shock, she takes Osamu's hand and declares that she will commit double suicide with him. Annette faints from the shock of Osamu having another woman in his life. Charlotte explains that after talking with Osamu, she realized that Otto only sought her company to perform his new songs, even when she was happy. This revelation makes it clear that he was using her for his own satisfaction. Additionally, she finds Gomez unappealing due to his odor. The king urges his daughter to choose a husband, but Charlotte angrily retorts that he never considered her feelings and reveals that she doesn't want to get married at all. She appreciates Osamu for being the only one to respect her opinion. Understanding her reasoning, Osamu agrees to the double suicide plan. However, before they can proceed, Gomez removes his helmet and transforms into a minotaur. He confesses that he planned to take over the kingdom and offer it to the Dark Lord, but didn't expect the princess to see through his disguise. Confused, Osamu asks if Charlotte knew his true identity, but she had no idea and simply thought he smelled bad. Flustered, the Minotaur declares that he will kill them all. Tama tries to wake Annette, knowing she can't fight the beast alone. Soldiers attempt to subdue the Minotaur, but are easily defeated. Rubble from the battle almost hits Annette, but Tama saves her. Tama then confronts the Minotaur, ready to fight. Otto, the minstrel, tries to assist, revealing his surprisingly high level of 89. He sings a song, but it has no effect. The Minotaur attacks Tama, but she deflects him, though her attacks seem ineffective against his sturdy horns. The Minotaur, excited by the challenge, prepares to attack Tama with full force, but Osamu intervenes, asking if they can be killed first. He explains the princess's wish to commit double suicide and requests that the Minotaur use his magnificent horns to fulfill their desire. Tama and the king protest, but Osamu remains resolute. The Minotaur agrees, planning to kill the king and destroy the city afterward. As the Minotaur prepares to kill them, Osamu reassures the trembling princess that their wish is about to be granted. The Minotaur charges at Osamu and the princess, with Tama and the king desperately trying to save them, but unable to reach them in time. At the critical moment, the princess gets cold feet and declares that she can't die yet. She wants to live and protect the people of her kingdom. Osamu, anticipating her change of heart, tells her that she is a kind princess and pushes her out of the Minotaur's path, saying she is not fit to be his partner in a double suicide. Before the Minotaur can strike Osamu, Annette erects a powerful barrier, declaring she won't let Osamu die like this. The barrier is so strong that it breaks the Minotaur's horns. Seizing the opportunity, Tama delivers a powerful attack that sends the Minotaur flying out of the castle and into the lake. Exhausted from the fight, the two girls relax. Tama thanks Annette for her help, and Annette reciprocates. The song-loving minstrel attempts to write a song about their budding friendship, but they quickly stop him, having had enough of his songs. The king then apologizes to his daughter for not considering her feelings and admits he is unfit to be a king or her father. The princess forgives him, suggesting they should discuss the future of the kingdom and their relationship together. The king is pleased to hear this. Osamu smiles, glad that everything worked out, but he feels a tinge of sadness as he once again failed to die. Later, we see Charlotte has become the Queen of Wrath. When soldiers report that monsters have appeared at the city's south gate, She orders the royal guard to exterminate them, expressing her reliance on each soldier to protect the kingdom. Meanwhile, outside the city, Tama and Annette are dragging Osamu in a coffin once more. They remark on Charlotte's bold decision to become queen and hope she will be all right. Osamu reassures them that Charlotte made this decision herself, so there is no need to worry. He then emerges from the coffin, declaring that while dying women are beautiful, there is also a certain charm to women who can stand on their own. Tama tells him to stop with his analogies and start walking, but he retreats back into the coffin. Eventually, the girls grow weary and decide to take a break for a bite to eat. Our lazy protagonist emerges from his coffin, eager for something to munch on, but they only have bread. Days, craving boiled tofu, expresses his dissatisfaction. Annette suggests they head to a nearby town to find some tofu. Although the group is just a few days away from reaching Tama's hometown, Annette wants to make a stop at a temple. Typically, an otherworlder arrives at one of the 4 temples in this world and heads directly to the Dark Lord's castle. However, Dazai's goal is not to defeat the Dark Lord. He just wants to find Sachin. This necessitates visiting all 4 temples to gather information on her whereabouts. Tama is shocked because this means they might have to travel all around the world if finding her proves difficult. Annette doesn't want Dazai to fight the Dark Lord because it's too dangerous, and Tama teases her again for being in love with him. Annette denies it, explaining that Dazai just gave her hope when she had given up on her job. Tama suggests that Sachin might be Day's soulmate, so Annette admits to traveling with him to find this out. Tama agrees to go with them until they reach her hometown, but Annette's half-hearted thank you makes Tama realize that Annette would rather be alone with Days. Annette quit her job, so Tama wonders if she will even be allowed into the temple. Annette isn't worried, though, because the head priestess of this next temple is a dear friend of hers. Moreover, Annette didn't leave her post without notice. She sent her letter of resignation using her familiar. This familiar makes its first appearance by snacking on Day's head. Annette scolds the little monster, but gets even more upset when she discovers it didn't deliver her letter of resignation. Days points out that the little beast is quite loyal for returning to its master, and he names it Mellows. Mellows seems to have taken a liking to him, but Days just wants to get more rest. Just then, Days must tell Mellows to quiet down as he begins to panic, and a terrifying dragon appears. Dragons are this world's most powerful monsters, and it terrifies the girls with a roar. Suddenly, a girl calls the dragon Ruka and commands it to stop. Annette and Tama are confused as the girl approaches the dragon and warn her to be careful. They are stunned when the girl speaks a different language to the dragon and tames it. The girl assumes that Annette and Tama's group has already suffered casualties because of the coffin and recommends they leave this incredibly dangerous area. Days emerges from his coffin, thinking it's time to eat, and the girls ask the stranger to forgive his rude behavior because he's an otherworlder. This infuriates the girl, and she vows to eliminate all otherworlders. She unleashes a power that terrifies the girls, and Annette has to block the attack with a barrier. Annette does her best to hold back the assault, but her shield eventually breaks. The group is badly injured, and the area is massively damaged. Annette concedes that the girls' magic is insanely powerful. The girls vow to protect Days at all costs, but the stranger brings them to their knees with her power. The symbol she bears terrifies Annette even more because it's the mark of the wrathful Dark Lord. Just then, the girls are shocked when Days stands up, having had enough of the dangerous behavior. He points out that the girls have nothing to do with this. Days reminds the girl that she's after otherworlders, and he is her only opponent. He tells her to do as she pleases, revealing that he's prepared for his life to end at any time. His friends beg him to stop, but it's too late as the stranger grants his wish and sends her arm right through his chest. The girls are terrified as Days collapses to the ground, and the stranger reveals her name is Waldelia. Annette and Tama faint, But Waldelia is shocked when Days reveals that he's still alive. He can tell that Waldelia has a lot of hatred inside her, and Days says he can relate, as he has lost his mind to intense hatred before as well. Waldelia is terrified to see him still alive as he approaches her, and Days comments on how sad her eyes look. He wants to know why, but Waldelia's terror causes her to flee with her dragon. She is still uneasy about what just happened and wonders who Days really is. A while later, we see that Mellows has brought the trio to the temple they were headed to. The priestess rushes to Annette, but Annette tells her that Days needs immediate medical attention. He's in really bad shape, so the priestess summons every priest to bring all the healing potions they have. A while later, we see that Days is fine, as he shops for some poison. The vendor explains that the poison is most effective when thrown at a monster, but he is shocked when Days just drinks it. Tama is furious because Days just made a miraculous recovery, but the priestesses are glad to see that he's doing well. The priestess named Nisha explains that she hasn't met anyone named Sachin, but she is more concerned about why Annette is traveling with an otherworlder. She's glad that Annette quit her job because she's too pure for it, but she's upset to see that she's traveling with an otherworlder. Nisha despises otherworlders because they use their divine gifts for selfish reasons. Just then, a strange rapping otherworlder named Kitaro appears, urging the girls to stop arguing and have some fun with him. They ignore him, but Kitaro demonstrates his overpowered skill of mass production, allowing him to create an unlimited amount of the world's currency. He offers to buy the girls whatever they want. Nisha swiftly gets rid of him, but he promises retribution. Nisha points out that all otherworlders are like Kitaro. Annette argues that Days is different, but Nisha can tell just by looking at him that he is just as destructive as the others. Annette continues to defend him, pointing out that he changed her entire life. At that moment, Days asks for money to buy some drugs. Annette casually hands it to him, still trying to convince Nisha that he isn't destructive at all. Nisha is then shocked to learn that Days doesn't have a gift. Despite this, Days still fought against the wrathful Dark Lord for his friends. Nisha is stunned to hear this because the wrath of the Dark Lord was actually destroyed by another otherworlder 7 days ago. Tama is equally shocked, and the two girls celebrate, believing that peace has finally come to their world. However, this makes them question who the girl with the dragon was. It's also strange that Days arrived 7 days ago, the same day that Annette's life changed completely. The biggest question remains: if this world no longer has a Dark Lord, why was Days brought here in the first place? Just then, the girls are startled as Days tears up a bunch of papers. Days dramatically explains that he was trying to write about the events that have happened since he arrived in this world. He was struggling to write, and now he is despairing over it. Annette eagerly waits to hear what he wrote about their first meeting, but her heart is shattered when Days reveals that he didn't write about her at all. Days isn't sure why, but his encounter with Waldelia gave him a surge of creativity, and he hopes that something else exciting will occur. Annette thinks he might find something if they explore the town, and recent events have made her want to buy Days some things anyway. In town, we see that Annette wants to buy Days some heavy-duty armor. There is no telling when they will be attacked again, and Annette never wants to see Days suffer ever again. Tama points out that Days looks like he's suffering right now, but Days actually kind of likes the oppressive feeling the armor gives him. The girls go to do more shopping, and Annette tells Days to stay put. Nisha finds him, and Days explains that he was just searching for new excitement. Nisha declares that Annette will be staying with her from now on because she has always been a pure girl and trusts people too easily. Nisha is sure that Annette will be unhappy traveling with him, so she begs Days to disband their party. Days just smirks, pointing out that it's up to Annette to decide what she wants to do. He declares that Nisha has no say in the matter and wonders why she thinks Annette will be unhappy. Nisha explains that it's because Days is an otherworlder, and she doesn't trust otherworlders. Just then, Nisha is stunned, and a crowd forms as a man arrives. This man is said to have been created by the heavens to stand above everyone in the world. He is an otherworlder, and his name is Lord Suzuki. Suzuki announces to everyone that the Dark Lord was defeated 7 days ago, and tells them to rejoice, as peace has come to their world. The crowd erupts with cheer, praising the otherworlders, but Suzuki reveals his real intentions. He points out that they risked their lives to bring peace, so it's only right that the otherworlders be allowed to rule the world. He declares that this time will be known as the Great Hero Age. Suzuki decides to be the ruler of this town, and his buddy Kotaro tells the townspeople to bow down to Suzuki. Kotaro then points to the girls and tells Suzuki that they were the ones who messed with him. Suzuki is furious, declaring that they committed acts of violence against an otherworlder. Annette tries to explain that he is mistaken, but Suzuki refuses to listen to someone who would harm a hero. Nearby, the town is on fire, and Days states that he finally feels like he can write his masterpiece. We then see that Suzuki used a skill to turn Annette into a pet. The transformation caused mutations in some parts of the elf's body, such as her eyes, which acquired darkened contours. Kotaro uses his rap to mock the fact that the purer a person is, the easier they fall under this spell, which was the case with the victim. Tama confronts the rapper, but Suzuki uses the same technique on the Catwoman, taming her just like her companion. With this, the human boasts about the power of this skill, claiming that no one can escape it. Emerging from the crowd, Asha steps forward to confront the transferee, stating that this was not how she taught Suzuki to use his gift. As she declares that the city of Vale will not bow to the whims of the human, all the inhabitants join the priestess's chorus and rise against the oppressor. Seeing this, Suzuki sends his wolves against the population, saying he will destroy everything to build another city in its place, since Vale does not want to surrender. Asha calls the human a bastard, and he sarcastically responds that he prefers to be called a hero, just as the elf did when they first met. To further provoke, he assures her that he will use Asha's church as his private castle. Shortly after, due to the wolves' power, which allows them to spit fireballs at the city's houses, Vale begins to burn. Even Tama attacks the residents, and one of the victims is Sensei, who is protected by his gigantic armor. After dozens of kicks and punches to the equipment, the girl manages to crack the steel until she destroys the armor. But the immense force she applied ends up throwing the armor's helmet at her head, knocking Tama out instantly. Thus, Sensei locks Tama in a barrel and leaves a warning that there is a violent cat inside. At that moment, he sees Asha being overwhelmed in battle. Enraged, the elf tells Sensei that this is how the transferees act in this world, using the gift they received for their selfish ends. Asha emphasizes that Suzuki was not like this when he arrived. On the contrary, he was a calm boy with a weak personality. As she starts this story, Sensei begins to write down what is said, as this type of character intrigues him. For this reason, the author asks which way the transferee went, and Asha says he headed toward the church, but reminds the writer that he does not have a gift for it. Therefore, he will have no chance against Suzuki. Regardless, all Sensei wants is to write his masterpiece, something he feels compelled to do. Not wanting to let the man go alone, Asha accompanies him. Upon reaching the church gate, Sensei is enchanted by the beauty and grandeur this place exudes. On the other hand, Asha cannot understand how this man can be so carefree, as the transferee possesses superhuman power, so it would be wise to have a plan before entering the church. That said, Sensei takes a vial of poison and drinks it all. Asha was thinking of silently approaching the back door, but the human had already opened the door by then. Inside, Sensei admits that he is interested in Suzuki's story and would love to write a novel based on what the transferee experienced. Faced with this statement, Suzuki becomes even more arrogant, having an author wanting to write about his heroic exploits in another world. However, Sensei notes that it is quite the opposite. The story is about a man who gains more power than he deserves and ends up falling into his own greed. Insulted, Suzuki promises not to let it go unpunished, so he orders his wolves to kill the intruders. Seeing that Sensei will not lift a finger to prevent his death, Usha steps forward and shoots rays of light to kill some wolves. But one of them grabs the cleric's magic staff with its teeth, taking her out of the fight. With this, Suzuki orders the other wolves to shoot flames at the rider, and this time Usha cannot do anything. However, when the fireballs approach, Sensei deflects them all using the helmet of the armor he wore, throwing the flames back at the attackers and causing a massive explosion. The helmet then reveals that it was actually Milo's deflecting the spells, as Annette had said that the armor was capable of deflecting first-level spells. After the flames dissipate, Kotaro begins to worry that these enemies are not as weak as they thought. But Suzuki reminds him that he still has a trump card, the giant wolf. Without delay, the transferee uses his number one pet to bite Sensei, which indeed happens. The bite draws blood from the man's shoulder until the poison spreads through the animal's body, killing it instantly. While Usha heals, the human Kotaro panics at what he witnessed, so he runs away. Usha demands the transferee surrender, but Suzuki is not done yet, as he saved his big trump card for the end. As soon as he orders Annette to leave to attack, the elf draws a dagger and charges at Usha, who never imagined this would happen one day. The priestess refuses to fight against her friend, so she intends to retreat, but Sensei has a better idea. While he takes the lead in the fight, he tells Usha that Annette is stronger than she thinks. Suzuki laughs at the rider's attitude, believing that his domestication skill cannot be cancelled. But Sensei is sure that the elf can still choose her own destiny, and it is not Suzuki who will dictate it. With her neck against Annette's blade, Sensei asserts that his companion is not a bird in a cage. As she hears these words, the elf holds the blade with her own hand, as if she is in an internal struggle between beheading the human or sparing him. Losing patience, Suzuki reinforces his commands with more mana, causing Annette intense physical pain. In her mind, she feels trapped like a bird in a cage until Sensei appears and encourages her to stab the dagger into her own leg. After doing so, she collapses and Sensei catches her. She returns to normal, much to Usha's relief. Sensei asks Usha to heal her friend, which she does while recalling Suzuki's earlier claim that Annette was stronger than she seemed. Suzuki drops his arrogant facade, revealing genuine fear as he watches his main skill being dismantled. Impulsively, he grabs the dagger and nearly takes his own life. However, Sensei stops him because he needs the dagger to finish his book. He questions Suzuki about his story, taking him back to his past on Earth, where he was a weak kid who couldn't stand up to bullying. Suffering daily verbal and physical abuse, Suzuki was treated like a pet by older kids, unable to defend himself. This experience explains his gift in Zauberberg, allowing him to control others. He considered ending his life, but lacked the courage. His life was dominated by cowardice and cruelty, feeling that no one could help him. Then, one day, he was hit by a truck and brought to Zauberberg. In this new world, he became a hero with the responsibility to save it from the Demon King of Wrath, using a powerful gift. Over time, he adapted and used his domestication ability to bring wild wolves to his side as companions. Despite this, he wasn't treated as a hero in Zauberberg either. The inhabitants were just as malicious, but now he had the power to react and wouldn't let this opportunity slip by. Suzuki doesn't believe he's done anything wrong because, in his mind, he will always be a nobody without determination. After hearing his story, Sensei concludes his novel based on Suzuki, a weak man who hoped to be a hero, but couldn't even become a villain due to his weakness. He titles the book Failure in Another World. Sensei thanks Suzuki for the content, but doesn't call it a masterpiece. He tears out a page, creating a magical circle that sends Suzuki back to Earth. Annette, shocked, checks Sensei's status and notices he now has the gift of writing. Usha believes this might be a special ability activated against other transfers, indicating Sensei was brought to Zauberberg to fight these supposed heroes. Frustrated, Sensei collapses, dejected at failing to write his definitive work. He wonders if he will ever find the inspiration he needs. Usha, watching the scene, wonders who he really is. Finally, Sensei asks what happened to Suzuki. In Vale City, the wolves that were once tamed by the transfers are now free. Tama, no longer Suzuki's pet, emerges from a barrel, confused by the chaos. Meanwhile, Usha gives Sensei a coffin with impeccable craftsmanship and golden details. She tells Annette that Sensei might play an important role in Zauberberg, and that his journey will be difficult and painful. Annette thinks Usha will prevent her from accompanying him, but Usha insists her friend stay by Sensei's side to protect him. Before Sensei leaves, Usha asks if Suzuki became like this because he gained more power than he deserved. Sensei isn't sure. Usha fears Suzuki will return to a miserable life on Earth, but Sensei believes it's up to Suzuki to decide if he will change. Back on Earth, Suzuki submits his resume at a local market to resume a normal life. The interviewer asks why he dropped out of school, triggering memories of Zauberberg. Seeing his anxiety, the interviewer gives him a chance, asking him to start his new job tomorrow. As he leaves the market, Suzuki feels the cold and extends his hands to appreciate the snowflakes melting on his skin. We then see, in Sontag, a northeastern region of Zauberberg, the renowned Weiss Cathedral hosted members of the Papal State, including Usher and Bishop Wolf, a clergyman bold enough to drink within the sanctuary. According to him, reality is for those who can't handle alcohol. He claimed the drink helped him endure the stinky dwarves he dealt with daily, unlike his colleague who worked with the demi in her jurisdiction. Suddenly, a servant of God with a strangely demonic appearance reminded Wolf that he shouldn't make such prejudiced comments in the Papal State. This goblin, the first non-elf appointed as a priest, had reached the rank of archbishop through exemplary work, which didn't necessarily please all church members. Feeling provoked, Wolf pointed his finger at his colleague's face and asked if the goblin wanted to switch jurisdictions with him, since he always got the hardest jobs. The colleague reminded him that the tasks clerics received depended on their behavior in the church, meaning Wolf should correct his habits instead of pointing fingers at others. During this exchange, Cardinal Miller asked everyone present to take a seat. With everyone at the table, he requested each member to report on their region, but first needed to address another matter. Interrupting the meeting, a clumsy cleric arrived at Weiss Cathedral via teleportation, stumbling and falling face first in front of her colleagues. As the others didn't recognize her, the cardinal introduced her as the new bishop of the Erston Temple and took the opportunity to ask everyone to introduce themselves to the newcomer while giving their reports. First up was Annette's substitute in the Deanstark region, the Holy Land of Mountains and Flames. Her name was Aria, an inexperienced cleric who forgot to mention that Charlotte, the daughter of the King of Wrath, had inherited the throne, earning a scolding from the cardinal. After this blunder, the goblin finally introduced himself as Elton, Archbishop of the Verdun Temple in the Midwalk region, the Holy Land of lakes and water, where, according to him, peace reigned under his jurisdiction, a testament to the Pope's authority. He also warned Aria that it was strictly prohibited to be late, putting a look of panic on the young elf's face. Next, Wolf introduced himself as the cleric of the Dritten Temple located in the Samstag region, the Holy Land of deserts and earth. Although it was far from the other regions, they were managing well. The cardinal mentioned frequent conflicts among the dwarves, and Wolf highlighted that he was almost assaulted while trying to mediate a dispute. Lastly, Usher reported that she led the Zweiden Temple. A few days ago, in her jurisdiction of Donnerstag, the Holy Land of Forests, an otherworldly inhabitant went on a rampage and destroyed half of the city of Vale. Usher was mobilizing labor to repair the area. Coincidentally, Miller convened this meeting to discuss the transferred individuals, as the Demon King of Wrath was defeated by a group of these summoned humans. Consequently, the Pope decided to seal the magic circles that connected the otherworld to Zauberberg to stop the summoning of transferred individuals. With this news, Elton expressed joy at seeing his people free from the Demon King, while Wolf was glad to be rid of the humans. However, Miller announced that this story was far from over, as the 7 transferred individuals who defeated the Demon King of Wrath had taken the demon's lands for themselves. Recently, the Pope received a declaration from the 7 stating that they would use their power to transform Zauberberg into a utopia. This situation was a real blow to the Pope, who believed the transferred individuals were angels sent to save this world. These beings, once considered children by the papal authority, now saw him as prey. In other words, a war had been declared between the transferred individuals and the World Church of Helsahan, as these true fallen angels began to show their claws in various regions of the Free Kingdom. Likewise, Waldelia, the daughter of the Demon King of Wrath, could not be ignored for possibly harboring a burning desire for revenge. In light of these events, Miller announced that Zauberberg had entered a new era, and it was the Church's mission to overcome these obstacles and maintain peace. Arya questioned how they would be able to face such powerful beings, triggering Usher's memory of Sensei cutting through the sky with his pen power before a mighty transferred individual. She then declared that she met a transferred individual in Vale capable of returning others summoned to their world of origin through his gift. Upon hearing these words, the Pope himself agreed with Usher, as he also believed this angel could be Zauberberg's hope. As he approached and saw his subjects kneeling before His Holiness, he was moved. He asked Usher to tell more about this human. Meanwhile, on the other side of the trenches, a woman hummed a cheerful song that contrasted with the dark environment that once belonged to the most powerful demon. Nearby, a man wanted to know if the lady was thinking about her beloved again, but she ignored the question. As 2 glasses of wine were served at the table by the men, aware that his question wouldn't be answered, he informed her that their allies had departed for various lands, while the 2 of them stayed to observe what was in store for this world. In the meantime, what awaited the exhausted Annette and Tam was a well-deserved rest in the city they had just arrived at before hitting the road again toward Gruen. As soon as she celebrated sleeping in a warm bed, the cat received the news that she had leveled up to 17 from carrying the coffin so much, making her wonder if this was something to celebrate. Keeping an eye on the conversation, a kid pointed out the direction of the town's inn and offered any information that might help the travelers since they didn't know the area well. First, he told them about an organization called the Hero Introduction Service, also known as the Transferred Order Service, where people were assigned to accompany groups with little self-confidence and provide them with a safe and comfortable journey. By the way, it was the boy himself who created this service. Hearing this, Tama laughs, recalling her bad experiences with transferred people. The kid is offended, insisting the transferred are heroes sent to save this world. He offers to introduce them to a summoned hero for just 4 Zizenzens and Janikos. Tama is ready to refuse, but Annette hands the money to the boy. Tama reminds her that 4 Zizenzens doesn't grow on trees, but Annette thinks it's pocket change if it keeps Sensei safe. The boy, looking smug, asserts that a life has no price, and the dead man in the coffin would smile in heaven, knowing a hero was accompanying his friends. Suddenly, Sensei opens the coffin and apologizes for still being alive, almost giving the boy a heart attack. The boy yells that the corpse spoke. Sensei, offended, clarifies that he's not dead yet. Annette assures the boy that Sensei is a hero, though the kid doubts heroes look like zombified vampires. The boy grabs the 4 Zizenzens and runs off, introducing himself as Nerd. Despite seeming like a scam, he promises to bring a real hero. Tama thinks it would be good to have this hero carry the coffin, but Annette insists on doing it herself. As night falls, the innkeeper, tired of them lingering, asks if they are staying the night. Annette says they are waiting for someone, but Sensei knows the boy won't return. According to the author, that rascal has the eyes of an adult. The rabbit girl deduces they are talking about Nur, the big myth, the most talkative and wretched kid in all of Zauberberg. Annette is furious at losing her money, while Sensei is curious about Nur's story. The rabbit girl explains that Nur, an orphan, deceives unsuspecting visitors for a living. Without an adult to guide him, he fools people indiscriminately. The innkeeper feels sorry for him, but acknowledges he is deceiving people. She argues that if heroes existed, Nur wouldn't be a street kid. The reflection in his blade shows only himself, his only company on a lonely journey. He survives by theft, and people sometimes steal from him. A regional bandit group exploits his fragility, counting the coins he gathered as a child thief. Nur nervously asks what they will do with him. One thug asks the same question, making Nur swallow dryly. Desperate, he bluffs that his transferred friends won't let it slide if he disappears. But the truth is they kidnapped him. The leader shows off a crossbow capable of piercing a dragon's armor and comments that Nur has been making money using their names. So he will have the honor of bragging in the afterlife about being killed by a hero. With the crossbow pointed at his head, Nur wonders if these are the heroes meant to save the world. Just before the fatal shot, Sensei arrives, pointing the crossbow at another thug's knee, causing him to scream. Another thug discovers Sensei is also from another world. Seeing Sensei's low life point and poisoned state, they dismiss him as a threat. The leader points the crossbow at Sensei, who begins to increase his HP monstrously. Sensei jokes about dying, asking the aggressor to shoot him in the heart. As the saying goes, the madman is only mad until he finds a madder one. The trio of goons runs away. Nur asks if Sensei is a hero, but Sensei doesn't see himself that way. He says adults are young people who have been betrayed, but Nur is still a child not ready to be an adult. Sensei leaves the dump, tying up Nur. Nur asks if that's it, and Sensei's silence implies it is. The next day, the group prepares to head to Gruan, with Sensei exhausted from chasing transferred ones all night. Annette, jealous, thinks Sensei was sweet-talking another lady, especially when he says it was a pleasant night. Suddenly, Nur, shameless, shows his face, assuring them he didn't lie. He promised to introduce them to a brave warrior, and this hero is standing right in front of them. As Sensei walked, his desire to end his life grew stronger, which scared Boyer, who tried to warn their companions about Sensei's state. Although they understood, they acted like nothing was wrong because they knew him well. Using Sensei's brave hero facade, Tama encouraged him to keep going until they arrived at her homeland, Grun. The cat girl, happy to be back, promised to lead everyone inside, but the local guards instead pointed their spears at them and threw them all in jail. Tama was separated from the others, and Nur thought it was because of something she had done, but Annette insisted that Tama was no thief. While Sensei used Milo's as a pillow, he asked the elf how people were executed in this world. The cleric refused to answer, knowing Sensei was fantasizing about Tama. Determined to escape, Nur quickly picked the lock, which prompted Annette to remark that it wasn't a skill a hero should have. Sensei put a hand on Nur's shoulder, and instead of praising him, questioned why he got involved in their situation. Unfortunately, the guards noticed the commotion, tied them up, and sent them to King Siberian. Minister Breed accused them of kidnapping the kingdom's princess, Matilda. Suddenly, Matilda entered the throne room and told her father that she wasn't kidnapped. She was just traveling to improve her skills and met these people along the way. She asked Annette if her story was true, and Annette, addressing Tama as Your Royal Highness, scared the cat girl. Tama, also known as Matilda, asked her father to release her friends, but the king refused unless his daughter promised to act more like royalty. Looking at her friends, Matilda agreed to her father's demands, effectively saying goodbye to her adventurous life. The prisoners were freed and went to an inn to eat. Nur devoured the food as if it were his last meal, while Sensei, having missed his chance at a dramatic death, took sedatives. Nair admitted he didn't know Tama was a noble, and Annette recalled being rude to her, which was why she feared the gallows. A waitress named Kajika, who used to serve Matilda, overheard their conversation and asked about the princess. Sensei, eager to learn more about Tama's past, asked Kajika to share her knowledge. Despite Annette's warnings about digging into a princess's past, Sensei insisted she was still just Tama to him. Meanwhile, Matilda watched from a window as a figure on a rooftop unleashed a power that destroyed the throne room. The king and guards rushed in to find a man named Kaibara, known as the fallen angel of gluttony, sitting on the throne. Kaibara announced his intention to consume the nation, and the soldiers prepared to fight. However, Kaibara used his cursed mouth to devour the guards, preferring the tender flesh of young demi-women. Outraged, King Siberian declared he would not let Kaibara leave alive. As a level 56 warrior with the divine beast's fist, Siberian fought Kaibara, using his thunder ability and wild cat palm technique. Kaibara, amused by the challenge, summoned his dark powers, but Siberian skillfully evaded the attacks and prepared to unleash his ultimate technique. As Tama appeared and called out to her father, Kaibara quickly realized he was facing a young demi, and the princess recognized the man from the rooftop. Tama stepped up to fight, but her father told her to stand back, saying she could not replace Leon. Kajika mentioned that Matilda had a twin brother named Leon, who was destined to inherit the throne. The people of Grun believed their civilization would thrive under the rule of the brave Leon and the kind Matilda. However, a storm struck 10 years ago, and while returning to the castle, Prince Leon and Queen Lipoma were killed in a landslide. After their deaths, the king became reclusive and depressed for a long time. Matilda saw her father suffering and didn't know what to do until she confided in her loyal maid Kajika, who decided to take Leon's place as the warrior heir her father always wanted. Unfortunately, this decision only brought conflict between father and daughter, and the consequences are still seen today. During the battle, Siberian claimed that Matilda's abilities were useless, enraging the young girl and causing her to attack recklessly. Without holding back, Kaibara launched his monstrous mouth at the girl, prompting Siberian to save his daughter at the cost of losing part of his arm to those sharp, interlocking teeth. Kaibara mocked the father's love for his daughter, lamenting that Siberian could no longer use his ultimate technique without the arm he just lost. The angel made sure to emphasize that he had just chewed the king's limb. Furious, Tama charged at Kaibara again, but Breard grabbed the princess before she could be killed and fled with her now unconscious. Coincidentally, upon reaching the middle of the city, the minister encountered the travelers who brought the heiress and warned them that a transferred one was attacking Grun. At that moment, an explosion occurred, alerting the entire population. When everyone looked at the scene, the dust settled, revealing King Siberian chained and kneeling before all. Kaibara introduced himself as the new king of this land and announced that he would not be an oppressive ruler, but he needed to fulfill his desire to consume the demi-flesh living here, focusing on the weak ones. A commoner threw a stone at the transferred one, who swallowed the demi without ceremony, causing panic among the population. Monsters prevented the inhabitants from fleeing, while Sensei wrote a story in his notebook. Soon he took Tama's hand and understood that she was the heroine of a tragedy. But the heroine he sought would never accept her tragedy meekly, so the princess needed to wake up and show the rest of her story. Unconscious, Matilda dreamed of advice she once received from Kajika, then woke up in this old friend's house and panicked to know what had happened when she fainted. Breard explained that the fallen angel took the capital and held her father hostage. She returned to her furious state, and this time prevented the minister from trying to control her. Annette mentioned the tragedy of the Claylan Pass, which took the lives of Tama's brother and mother. According to her, There isn't a citizen who hasn't shed a tear over this tragedy, proving that the people love the royalty of this nation. In other words, if they lose Matilda too, it will be even worse for them. Therefore, the cleric wanted Matilda to stay out of this. After all, Annette knew a secret along with Sensei to return the transferred ones to where they came from. Matilda understood the situation and let her friends go. Then, the group encountered two ogres guarding a passage further ahead. Sensei stepped forward and claimed to the monsters that he and his colleagues came to be eaten after being moved by the king's speech. Knowing the author's history, his friends worried that he was seriously ill. While the ogres, not expecting this, had no idea how to react. Thus, within some time, the trio was behind bars again, and Annette began to rant about having her freedom taken away. Sensei confessed that death was a good thing, but that this was not the moment for that. Then he took Nur's hat, where he found the clip that the boy must use once again to save the group. Meanwhile, Minister Beard arrived in Matilda's room to deliver soup to her, but the princess had escaped through the window. In the throne room, Kaibara reflected on which demi he wanted to devour next, with Siberian, in a state of absolute rage, beside him, chained and bloody. Soon, the ogres arrived to tell the story of the human who wanted to be eaten. But Tama interrupted with brute force, knocking down the monsters without mercy. Siberian regretted that his daughter made this decision, unlike the fallen angel of gluttony, who rejoiced to see his most desired dish before him once again. The story shifts to the past, where Tama is seen secretly observing her father training her brother, Leon. It becomes clear that Leon is struggling with his training, and their father sternly urges him to improve, reminding him that he is destined to become the next king. Noticing Tama spying on them, her father reprimands her. Tama boldly asks to join the training, arguing that it's unfair that only her brother gets to participate. However, her father angrily tells her to know her place as a princess and orders her to go read in her room after changing into a dress. Though reluctant, Tama agrees and her father sighs, wondering what he will do with her. Later, Tama's mother, Lipoma, is seen tending to her hair and mentions that she heard about the trouble Tama caused with her father again. Tama expresses her frustration, stating that she hates her father and wishes she could learn martial arts too. She laments being born a princess. Her mother advises her to stop speaking like that and begins to tell her something important, though the story doesn't reveal what it is, transitioning back to the present. In the present, Tama's father confronts her, questioning why she has returned. Kaibara smugly states that he knew she would come back if he used her father as bait. Tama vows to defeat him, but Kaibara, relishing the challenge, decides to use her for his entertainment before killing her. He launches a lightning attack, sending her flying. As she recovers, Tama realizes the attack is her father's technique. Kaibara explains that his overpowered skill allows him to gain the abilities of those whose flesh he consumes, including the ability to use their skills. He taunts Tama, saying he will tear her apart using her father's power, and then eat her. Meanwhile, Osamu and his group have sneaked into the palace. Annette is surprised to learn that this infiltration was Osamu's plan all along, as she had thought he genuinely wanted to be eaten. Nur dismisses the idea that anyone would want that, but Osamu is actually disappointed that he won't have the chance to be eaten to death. He leads the group to a room, revealing it's where he intended to go all along. Though Nur is puzzled that they aren't heading to see the Otherworlder, Osamu insists that this room is sufficient. They enter and discover that it's the Queen's room. Despite the others' warnings, Osamu searches the room, eventually finding a locked drawer. He convinces Nur to unlock it by flattering him, and they find the Queen's journal inside. Back in the throne room, Tama is still standing despite Kaibara's relentless attacks. He mocks her martial arts skills, claiming they won't help her. Tama recalls a memory of Leon training in the forest, where she had asked why he continued to train despite disliking fighting. Leon had explained that while Tama had more talent for martial arts, He needed to work harder to protect their family and kingdom. Inspired, Tama rises once more, determined not to give up, knowing Leon would do the same in her place. Amused, Kaibara admits he enjoys eating spirited opponents like her. Kaibara then reminisces about his previous life, where he was a rich, pampered child who felt more like a pet than a son. Despite having everything he wanted, he felt empty and sought to feel alive, leading to violent outbursts. His unfulfilled desires only deepened his sense of being caged, and after a life of anger and emptiness, he was hit by a truck and sent to this world. Now, he revels in his newfound freedom to eat as he pleases. He taunts Tama, preparing to consume her, but Osamu intervenes. Kaibara's fangs freeze at the sight of him, and he is puzzled by the strange feeling his instincts are giving him. Osamu's presence disrupts Kaibara's attack, and Annette declares that Osamu has the power to banish otherworlders from this world. She urges Osamu to write Kaibara's story and send him back, but Osamu refuses, dismissing Kaibara's tale as boring. This infuriates Kaibara, who unleashes a devastating lightning attack, vowing to kill them all before devouring the demi-princess. Annette notices Nier has been knocked out, and Tama blames herself for the situation. She believes none of this would have happened if she hadn't insisted on fighting and trying to become like her brother. Overcome with guilt, she begins to cry, but Osamu consoles her, handing her a book. He tells her that it's a story he dedicated to her and asks her to read it. As soon as she opens the book, the pages seem to come alive. Annette, watching in awe, wonders if Osamu's gift works on non-otherworlders too. Kaibara attempts to attack her, but she blocks with her shield. Osamu then addresses Tama, saying that as he learned about her past, he realized she suppresses her feelings due to her kind nature. He calls her a clumsy woman, burdened by her father's ideal of a perfect princess, a role that troubled her deeply. After the family tragedy, she tried to fill the void left by her brother, hoping to uplift her father's spirits. However, her father misunderstood her intentions, widening the rift between them. In the process, Tama lost sight of her true self, but her late mother had once told her who she was meant to be. Tama then recalls her mother's words, reminding her that her life is her own to live, and she should follow her desires. When Tama expressed doubt, saying her father would never allow it, Lapma reassured her that she would convince him, revealing that even her father wanted her to be happy. Osamu then asks Tama whether she will live as the ideal princess her father envisions, or as the ideal prince in place of her brother. Conflicted, Tama hesitates. Osamu tells her that neither path is truly hers and encourages her to write her own story. This realization breaks the mental chains binding Tama, releasing a golden energy from within her. Her father, observing this, notices that she has manifested the crest of the divine beast, a power Tama first displayed as a child. Her brother had been amazed and wanted to tell their father, but Tama stopped him, knowing their father would disapprove, as he didn't want her practicing martial arts. Their father had overheard and now realizes he was the reason Tama sealed away her talent. He regrets suppressing her abilities in an attempt to protect her and acknowledges his mistake. Kaibara, intrigued by Tama's newfound power, reveals that he has finished digesting her father's flesh. He mocks her, claiming that if this were a manga or anime, she might enjoy a happy ending with her awakened power. But in reality, he is a predator, and that won't happen. Osamu is skeptical, and Tama launches an attack using her father's skill. Kaibara counters with the same skill, but Tama's move was a feint, and she surprises him with a headbutt. She then uses her father's special technique, King's Fang, to defeat him. Exhausted, Tama collapses, and her father catches her. Annette offers to heal her, praising her for her bravery. Later, Osamu returns Lapma's journal to the king, who is astonished that Osamu read it without permission. Despite this, the king is grateful that Osamu guided his daughter and saved her, choosing to let the transgression slide. Osamu humbly says he merely wrote a book. Breed arrives, noticing that Tama's crest has awakened. The king acknowledges her accomplishment, but Breed points out that her king's fang is still incomplete. As Kaibara gets back up, his appearance drastically changed. Kaibara reveals that he is one of the 7 heroes who defeated the Dark Lord, having secretly consumed the Dark Lord's flesh. Now, he feels the power surging within him and declares himself the apex predator of this world. As he prepares to attack, Waldelia suddenly severs his head. Recognizing her as the Dark Lord's daughter, Kaibara taunts her, recalling how eating her father's flesh gave him his first taste of life. Waldelia, enraged by his words, blasts him away and then turns her gaze towards the others. Osamu greets her from behind, and she wonders how he's still alive. Osamu asks if she feels better after avenging her father, but Waldelia, surprised by the question, quickly departs, vowing to kill him next time. Nier marvels at Osamu's ability to drive away such a powerful foe, while Osamu notes that despite her victory, sadness still lingered in Waldelia's eyes. He muses that he would like to write her story someday. The scene shifts to the townspeople rebuilding after the disaster. Fawn thanks Osamu and the others for saving their capital, learning that the princess has decided to stay and support the king. Annette remarks that they will miss her, but respects her decision. Back at the castle, the king finds Tama in her room and comments that it's meant for a ladylike princess, not a tomboy. He asks if the travelers have already left town, suggesting she go with them. He reassures her that he doesn't need the protection of an untrained greenhorn and urges her to return once she has completed her journey. Understanding, Tama quickly changes out of her stuffy clothes and escapes out the window, thanking her father. She vows to become a powerful martial artist by the time she returns and departs. Breed arrives, questioning if this is the only way the king knows how to communicate with his daughter. The king is confident that she understood his intentions this time and asks Lipoma and Leon to watch over her. The scene then cuts to Nier dragging Osamu's coffin, and Osamu comments that Nier lacks the skill Annette had for the task. Annoyed, Nier tells Osamu to drag the coffin himself, but Osamu insists it's unnecessary, as Tama rejoins the group, much to their delight, and resumes her place in their party.
Tama returns to the group, and they're happy to see her. She rejoins their party. The scene then shifts to Osamu and his friends standing before the World Tree in Grun. They're excited, but Osamu dislikes anything brimming with vitality. Tama explains that this is the largest tree in Zauberberg. Annette adds that the sight of this tree refreshes her spirit every time she visits. Tama agrees with a bit of pride, but Annette continues, telling Osamu that this tree is said to be a holy one that watches over Zauberberg and protects all who visit it. Tama wants to explain this to Osamu herself, but Annette keeps going, mentioning that at the foot of the tree lies a village named Tanariko, where people live simple lives in harmony with nature. She suggests they visit the village, which irritates Tama since Annette is taking all her lines. Later, they arrive in the town in the evening, shocked to see a casino there. Nier observes that this doesn't look like a place where people live simple lives with nature, and they also notice the town is filled with violence. Osamu believes this must be the reality the town has chosen. He suddenly realizes he's out of poison pills and panics, wondering where he can hang himself. Nier is puzzled by his behavior, and Osamu, feeling restless without his pills, starts eating. Nier advises against it, and they decide to ask the village mayor what's going on. The mayor explains that Tanariko used to be a quiet town blessed by the World Tree, but a few months ago, some other worlders came to see the tree and started living there. They built the gambling hall, attracting more unruly otherworlders from all over. These outsiders gradually took away the town's peaceful lifestyle, and even the leaves of the sacred tree have begun to wilt. The mayor believes the World Tree spirit is saddened and asks the travelers to help restore the town to its original state. Osamu, still depressed about his lack of poison pills, demands the mayor restore his pill jar first. Suddenly, another otherworlder named Ada arrives and offers to save the World Tree, revealing that he's also an otherworlder. Annette and the others are cautious, but Ada assures them he's different from the others and desires peace for this world. Ada asks the village chief to let him handle the task and Annette likes the idea, suggesting they help him. But she then notices Osamu is gone. Meanwhile, Osamu wanders through the town, disturbed by how healthy he feels. He decides he needs to do something about it and spots a smoky cave. Drawn by its aura of immorality, he enters. Inside, he sees addicts smoking something and realizes this is what he's been looking for. He takes a deep breath, inhaling the smoke. A mysterious girl approaches him. Noticing he's new around there, she menacingly offers to take him somewhere more fun. Later, we find Osamu in her bar, drinking to his heart's content. The girl warns him not to overdo it, but he explains he's trying to drink himself to death because he can't go on living. The girl finds him intriguing and asks what he was doing at the cave. She explains that it's a gathering spot for those addicted to the pain-relieving leaves of the world tree. Osamu reveals he lost something precious to him, and the idea of being healthy all the time keeps him awake. The girl offers to help him sleep peacefully, mentioning that she's a dancer. She offers to perform for him, but Osamu, with bad memories of dancing, says he doesn't understand what's so great about it. Despite this, the girl dances, changing his mind, and Osamu thinks it's a pleasant night, where Annette is crying over Osamu's disappearance. Yamada asks if something is wrong, and Nier explains it's because one of their friends is missing. The girl then carries Osamu back to the house. Annette is devastated to see him with another girl, and the village chief asks the girl, named Ishii, why she's there. He says she's banned from the village, and Ishii leaves saying she just came to drop off the man. The village chief remarks that yet another person has fallen victim to her, and Tama asks who she is. The chief explains that Ishii is also known as the Witch of Tonariko. Tama finds this ominous, and the chief continues, saying that when the Otherworlders started building the gambling hall, the villagers were powerless to stop them, but Ishii was different. She gained favor with the Otherworlders and opened a bar next to the hall. Yamada realizes she's a traitor, and the chief says Eshi has always been mysterious. They know nothing about her age or history, but they left her alone since she seemed harmless. However, she turned out to be a trickster, now making a fortune by charming fallen Otherworlders with her liquor and dancing. Yamada declares that Ishii will have to pay for her crimes along with the Otherworlders, and the chief is thrilled, seeing Yamada as a true hero who can save the town. The next day, Osamu heads back to the bar. Annette tries to stop him, reminding him that the battle against the Otherworlders is about to begin. But he doesn't recall agreeing to such a dangerous task. Ignoring her, he leaves for the bar, and Yamada tells Annette not to worry, assuring her that Osamu will come to his senses once they defeat the evil in the town. At the bar, Osamu thanks Ishii for her dance the previous night, saying it helped him forget his painful life and even dream for the first time in a while. Ishii warns him not to stay around too long, revealing that she's known as a witch. She tells him not to blame her if he's ruined, but Osamu says that's exactly what he wants. Eshi then wishes the spirit of the world tree would protect his painful life, making him curious about what she means. She explains that there's a legend about the tree's spirit, saying that it grants the wishes of the weak and sick when it descends. She suggests that Osamu pray to the tree's spirit to ease his pain. But Osamu notes that she's the one who seems to need saving. He realized this while watching her dance, which he found beautiful yet filled with sadness. She tries to deny it, but just then, the casino boss and his lackeys enter. Ishii serves them drinks as the lackeys intimidate some guys into repaying the money they owe. These are the same guys Osamu had encountered earlier, and they nervously promise to return the money. The lackeys demand payment today, threatening to bury them in the desert with an ops skill if they don't. The guys, terrified, leave to get the money. The lackey then complains to his boss that their profits are down because there are fewer idiots like them around, and suggests moving the casino elsewhere. The boss dismisses this idea, saying it's too soon and that they should lure in more townspeople. He believes they can control the townspeople once they get them hooked on gambling. Eshi reminds the boss that he promised to stay away from the townspeople in exchange for her protection money. The boss dismisses her concerns, calling it just business, and orders his lackeys to kidnap a few townspeople to introduce them to the joys of gambling and smoking the world tree leaves. She tries to stop him, but a lackey pushes her aside. Osamu checks on her, telling her that in his world, people like her aren't called witches. They're called angels. Suddenly, the ground shakes, and the boss and his lackeys discover that their casino has been destroyed by Yamada and Osamu's friends. A lackey named Sabu asks what they're doing, and Yamada declares that he's here to judge the Otherworlders and the witch for their crimes. The lackeys attempt to fight back, but Osamu intervenes, complaining that Yamada has ruined his time at the bar. He expresses his disdain for people who boast about grand ideals, while Yamada urges him to come to his senses and think about what he should do. Osamu steps aside, thanking Yamada for his advice, but noting that he's never changed his ways because of someone else's lectures, nor respected anyone for giving them.
Ignoring Osamu, Yamada goes to deal with the Otherworlders. Seibu and the other lackeys attack him, but Yamada takes them down with a single strike. Realizing they're outmatched, the lackeys flee the town. Yamada then asks Eshe if she plans to turn against him too. She says she doesn't and thanks him for saving the town.
The townspeople celebrate Yamada as a hero, but they look at Eshe with disdain, blaming her for the town's troubles. Yamada tries to calm them down, saying that Ishii regrets her actions, but they ignore him and start throwing stones at her, trying to drive her out of town. Osamu steps in, calling the townspeople scum for treating someone who protected the town so poorly. He explains that Ija appeased the thugs daily to keep them from harming the townspeople, and without her efforts, they would have overrun the town. He tells the townspeople that Ishii is the true savior of the town, and that they should be ashamed for throwing rocks at her. However, the townspeople refuse to believe him and dismiss his words. Ishii stops Osamu from saying more and leaves the town, apologizing to the citizens. The townspeople rejoice at her departure, while Yamada is shocked by the truth. Yamada asks Osamu if he knew this would happen, and Osamu responds that the line between good and evil is often blurry. Many wish for a clear distinction, but the world is gray. Yamada wonders if Osamu is implying that he was wrong, but Osamu says he doesn't know. The only thing he's certain of is that the town let go of its own protector. With that, he and his friends leave the town. Later, the village chief approaches Yamada with another request. He explains that the Otherworlders made a fortune selling the leaves of the World Tree, and now that the evildoers are gone, they plan to continue this practice, hoping the tree will revive and bring them more blessings. The chief asks Yamada to be the town's bodyguard, offering him 10% of their profits in return, and to protect them from Otherworlders who might interfere. Hearing this, Yamada is stunned and deeply regretful of his actions. Meanwhile, Osamu and his friends continue their journey, reflecting that the village's fate wasn't a good one. Annette realizes that Osamu saw the whole picture, but Osamu disagrees, saying he's no different from Yamada as he also failed to save Eshe. They then notice the withered leaves of the World Tree falling. The tree dries up and the townspeople are shocked. Osamu then sees a vision of a glowing Ishii in his mind, who thanks him for understanding her and hopes he finds peace before disappearing. Osamu notices that his poison pill bottle is now full, and he recalls Eshe saying that the wishes of the weak and sick are granted when the World Tree spirit descends. He realizes that Ishii is the spirit of the World Tree, and that he now has an infinite supply of poison pills. As the heroes continued their journey, they eventually arrived at a vast desert where the sun was blazing hot. Not even the tough Annette could handle the heat, so she decided to let poor Miles carry Sensei's coffin. Meanwhile, the writer was outside, dramatically pleading with the scorching sun to turn him into a pile of ashes. Tama, annoyed, complained that they couldn't see anything on the horizon and asked if they were on the right path. Annette could only hope they were, because she wasn't sure. According to the map, they were supposedly taking the shortest route to the Dritten Temple, but this desert was definitely not recommended for people with as little experience as they had. Nur was quick to point out that he wasn't a desert novice. After all, the talkative kid was practically a human camel, having been born in these lands. With that bit of information, the girls felt a spark of hope as Nur shared some desert survival tips. His first lesson due to the extreme daytime heat. Monsters and bandits usually come out at night. No sooner had he said this than a gang of criminals appeared beside the group. One of them announced that the travelers were about to enter the territory of the hunters. His name was Toru, the first chief of the transferred runners hunters, and he demanded that the travelers pay a toll. Tama and Annette weren't in the mood to deal with them, so they told Sensei to get back in the coffin and prepared to fight. The problem was, the poor guy's coffin felt like an oven, so he at least wanted to keep the lid open. Without any hesitation, the Princess of Grun unleashed her tiger kick on one of the thugs, but but Toru quickly recovered and attacked with his scorpion vehicle. Annette had to jump in with her shield to prevent Tama from getting hit. In the chaos, Matilda took the chance to land another blow on Toru, knocking him off his mount. One of the thugs warned Toru that these women weren't messing around, and Toru agreed, but he saw that Sensei, exhausted from the heat, might be their weak point. So he revved up his motorcycle and charged straight at Sensei. Annette trusted Nur to protect the rider since he was standing in front of the coffin, but the boy's legs trembled with fear as the hunter's leader approached. Toru taunted Nur, pointing out that he had never drawn the sword he carried. Enraged, Nur responded that he was a brave warrior. Toru laughed and challenged Nur to prove it, reminding him that drawing his sword meant he was ready to die. He also made sure to emphasize that the venom of his scorpion would bring a painful death within an hour to anyone stung. With that, Toru asked if Nur was ready, but it was Sensei who answered. Craving a dose of that venom, Sensei climbed onto the scorpion and urged Toru to prove he wasn't bluffing. Startled, Toru commanded his scorpion to attack, and the creature pierced Sensei's chest with its tail, injecting the venom. Toru twisted the throttle to maximize the effects, but instead, Sensei's body responded with his own venom, dealing massive damage to the scorpion, which burst like a balloon. Meanwhile, with his mask showing a frustrated expression, Sensei watched as Toru wept over the loss of his beloved scorpion, Chavez. Toru then charged at Sensei with everything he had. Nur tried to react, but his legs were paralyzed with fear. Just as Toru was about to strike Sensei with his club, everyone heard the howl of a beast, and one of the thugs urged Toru to retreat, warning that the wolf was coming. Before making a hasty exit with his backup, Toru vowed to avenge Chaba's death. Once the commotion died down, the group's cleric healed Sensei, while Tama tried to cheer up Nur, who was visibly frustrated that he hadn't been able to act. She assured him that he would find the courage next time, but Nur remained disheartened by his cowardice. He apologized to Sensei, who responded that no one is born a hero, and people usually only grow stronger after facing challenges and even humiliation. Nur seemed moved by his travel companion's strange words, while Annette warned that the howl they just heard was concerning, so they should continue their journey as soon as possible. She also placed her trust in Nur, asking him to lead the way. The boy lifted his head and said he knew of a place where they could stay. And so, the talkative kid led the group to an orphanage where they planned to spend the night. Some of the children recognized Nur, and among them, an old friend named Nate ran to hug him along with the others. Soon after, Aunt Nathi also appeared to welcome the unexpected visitors. The caretaker quickly prepared a proper feast to greet the guests, and Nur made a point of saying that nothing beats Auntie's cooking. She mentioned that a very generous person had been donating food to the orphanage, and that she wished she could thank them, but this person never showed up. Sensei, however, found the taste a bit bland and asked if there was any synthetic seasoning to give the food a boost. But since no one had any idea what that ingredient from Sensei's planet was, everyone just stared at him blankly. Nate remembered when Nur had said he wouldn't return until he had become a brave hero, so the talkative kid explained that he had kind of become one after all, as he was now part of a group of heroes. The children were fascinated and asked for the names of the heroes, so Nur introduced Sensei. For his part, Sensei explained that he was just an author who wrote stories, so Nate asked him to tell them one. Soon, Sensei began a tale about a man who dumped his debts on a friend and then ran away to squander his money. But Aunt Nathi asked him to choose a lighter story instead. That night, Nur watched the children sleeping beside the women on his team until the beast outside began to howl again. Aunt Nathi warned that it was a hungry wolf that had been roaming the area and advised everyone not to wander into the desert if they valued their lives. Meanwhile, Sensei wandered through the desert with Milos perched on his head. Milos, sensing something strange, guided Sensei to a pile of dead animals and broken trees, all stained with dark red. Seeing the scene, Sensei chuckled lightly and said it was quite interesting. Later that night, Tama punched Nur in the face, dealing him a small amount of damage. Fed up with getting hit, Nur stood up and noticed a shadow passing by the window. He quickly remembered Aunt Nathi's warning about the wolf, so he grabbed his sword and went outside to check around the orphanage. But instead of finding a beast, he saw a man on crutches carrying a basket of vegetables. Thinking this was the man who had been secretly donating food to the kids, Nur helped him pick up the scattered vegetables. The man explained that he loved seeing the kids smile and admitted that he liked to watch them eat happily through the window. He also mentioned he'd never seen Nur there before. Nur shared that his parents had died when he was young and that he had grown up at the orphanage, though he had since left. He also mentioned that the sword he carried had belonged to his father and that he was on a journey to become a brave hero, hoping to inspire the orphanage children to believe they could become someone important day two. but Nur admitted he struggled to find courage when it mattered most. Hearing this, the man started crying and assured Nur that his parents would be proud of him. He asked about Nur's travels, and as Nur shared his stories, Sensei secretly took notes. When morning came, Nur invited the man inside to meet the children, but the man felt unworthy. Still, Nur asked if he had some time to spare. Together, they explored the area until they found an oasis and gathered food for the orphanage. Meanwhile, the children played with Sensei, and the women noticed several baskets of food placed at the door. Behind a wall, Nur and the man found amusement in the surprise they had left for the kids. That night, Nur was exhausted and fell asleep quickly, but Aunt Nathie woke him up to warn him that Nate had been taken by hunters. Outside, Toru and his gang demanded the orphanage's leader show themselves. Tama, Annette, and Nur stepped out to confront them. Seeing this as his chance to avenge Chavez, Toru ordered his gang to attack. The Catwoman and the elf defended the orphanage, while Nur trembled with fear. Before things could go wrong, the man on crutches returned and pulled Nur to safety. Away from the battle, Nur cried in frustration for not being brave enough again. The man, remembering a time when 3 men had overpowered a young boy, urged Nur to hide and leave the rest to him. In his previous world, the man had lost something important because of his injured legs, but now he possessed the power to kill evil men who hurt kind boys like Nur. As he spoke, the man began to transform into a huge werewolf, while Sensei continued to take notes in secret. The werewolf tore through the hunters, driven by the memory of his loss, knowing it was men like these who had caused so much suffering. At the same time, Nur was flooded with memories of the man on crutches in his life. The man's journey gave Nur the strength he needed to draw his sword. However, Nur stepped in front of the werewolf, fearing that his uncle would lose himself in his beastly form and never return to the gentle man he once was. The werewolf ignored Nur and destroyed Toru's mount, but just as he was about to strike the final blow on Toru, Nur defended him with his sword. Consumed by rage, the werewolf attacked Nur, who dropped his sword and opened his arms to face death. Seeing Nur's eyes, the werewolf recognized the boy as the person he had lost long ago. He struggled to regain control and gradually returned to his human form. After the battle, the man revealed that he had lived alone for a long time. Like Nur, he had lost his parents when he was young and led a solitary life. But one day, a boy reached out to him, and it was the first time in his life he had felt someone's kindness, though that happiness was short-lived. The man explained that on the day some men cruelly beat his friend, he had run away and was hit by a truck. Since arriving in this world, he had thought about that event every single day. After all, because his legs wouldn't move, he couldn't save his friend. But Sensei questioned whether that was really the reason he didn't save the boy or if it was an excuse to hide his own cowardice. Hearing this, Nur cried out in anger, arguing that not everyone was as strong as they appeared. Unlike himself, who saw himself as a coward full of excuses. As he finished speaking, Sensei's pages began to glow. He acknowledged that, while the man might be a coward, he was still kinder than most for protecting the orphanage children, killing the creatures of the night, and keeping the evil at bay. While many who were transported chose to use their powers for selfish reasons, this man used his to do good. Nur thought it was unfair of Sensei to describe the man as arrogant in his story, so Sensei tore out a few pages and made the remaining ones shine. Because of this, the children finally got to meet the wolfman before he left, and they thanked him for the food. Then, the man vanished from the desert. Nur asked where he went, but even Sensei couldn't say. Meanwhile, the man with the crutch returned to the site of the truck incident, where the boy who had helped him once again reached out his hand to his old friend, Seido. In the lands of the Demon King, where the 7 fallen angels had overthrown the devil to seize his throne, a man asks a girl if she's heard what happened to Kaibara, as he's heard that the conquest of Grun has failed. He also mentions that Sengoku is battling in the desert, challenging the indestructible dwarven fortresses. Reflecting on this, he admits to underestimating the enemy's ally from Helsan, as the Storm Mage is proving to be a formidable opponent. Meanwhile, monsters and dwarves clash in a bloody battle below. Atop a siege weapon, Bishop Wolf remains utterly unfazed by the carnage beneath him, more concerned about running out of liquor. Osha scolds him for being irresponsible amidst such chaos, but he dismisses her concerns, saying she worries too much. Frustrated, the elf grabs him, questioning whether this behavior is fitting for a commander of a nation. Wolf, however, merely sees himself as a humble priest. Their argument is interrupted by the arrival of more troops under the command of the fallen angel of Desolation, who orders them to join the battle. Faced with this new development, Yusha asks what the leader plans to do. Wolf then requests Chief Doran, the dwarf general, to lure the enemies to the eastern flank. Doran, furious, retorts that he doesn't take orders from an elf, reminding everyone that he is the king of Gelb and will handle things his way. Yet, Despite his anger, Doran follows Wolf's suggestion, directing the enemies eastward. With that, Wolf raises his staff and casts Sturm on Drang, summoning a hurricane that swiftly wipes out the monsters. King Doran is impressed, while the fallen angel of desolation calmly retreats with his troops. To everyone's surprise, floating in the eye of the storm is none other than Sensei. After the victory, Chief Doran gathers the troops to celebrate, and during the festivities blames the church for bringing in these fools causing chaos. Wolf tries to calm Doran down, saying there's no need to insult his superiors. Doran mocks him, calling him a typical lapdog loyal to his master. Wolf counters, vowing they'll expel the fallen angels without the Pope's help, raising his mug in a toast to the bravery of the dwarves. Doran, in turn, compliments Wolf, acknowledging that he's done a fine job and congratulates him as a war companion. Meanwhile, Tama and Nur take the chance to grab some food, while Yusha remarks to Annette that she hadn't expected to see her here. Annette, the cleric, admits it was by chance as she and her group got lost in the desert. By the time she realized, Sensei was already caught in a tornado, and the rest is history. Usha asks where Sensei is, and Annette reassures her that he's fine as he was inside a coffin. Suddenly, Sensei sneaks up behind them, joking that being stuck inside the coffin at that moment was unfortunate, though it did save his life, even if it cost him his precious bed. Wolf arrives and greets Annette after a long time, while Milos, spotting the bishop's familiar, falls in love at first sight. Wolf apologizes for dragging Sensei into the conflict and asks if he's all right. Sensei, however, urges the elf to reflect on his failure to kill the author properly. Despite this, Sensei expresses gratitude for experiencing another near-death moment. To bring the visitors up to speed, Usha explains that the nation is at war with one of the fallen angels. Tama, eager to join in, boasts that she defeated one of these angels back in Grun. Wolf dismissively comments that the angel must have been weak for that to happen, angering the demi-human, who argues that her people are stronger than they appear, and that Sensei has the power to send the angels back. Wolf acknowledges that he's already heard this from Yusha and mentions his interest in the writer's ability. However, in Wolf's opinion, they don't need that power, as nothing compares to his own magical prowess. He assures them that the church will handle the fallen angels and advises Sensei to stay out of it rather than play the hero. With that, he leaves, prompting Tama to question if he's truly that powerful. Usha confirms that Wolf is indeed the Storm Mage, one of the strongest in the world, and even the fallen angels are no match for him. Meanwhile, in the fallen angels' castle, Sengoku assures his comrades that he'll return to battle tomorrow, and this time he won't be defeated. One angel, wearing a tie, suggests changing tactics and letting the women handle things, particularly the fallen angel of greed, who has experience facing the Storm Mage. Back in the kingdom of Gelb, Sensei notices that Milos seems downcast and assumes it's because of the beautiful familiar he met at the party. When Milos confirms this, Sensei explains that unrequited love is the purest kind, and the anguish that comes with it should be embraced. Horrified by Sensei's depressed state, Milos hesitates, so Sensei reconsiders and decides to help the creature find his beloved. After all, two foolish men wandering the world in search of a woman isn't uncommon. As for the familiar's crush, Sensei suggests naming her, given that she's practically the female version of Milos. He proposes Familas, which the familiar seems to find ridiculous, though Sensei interprets it as approval. It doesn't take long for them to spot her standing next to Wolf in the middle of the street. The elf surrounded by several women, all intrigued by his pointy ears and magical staff. Sensei observes that the elf, unlike Milos, seems to attract attention from women, but he reassures Milos not to be discouraged. In love, Sensei explains, a man must find a way to win the heart of the woman he desires. With that advice in mind, the pair trail Wolf and his familiar through the dark alleys of the city, eventually arriving at a door in a secluded part of town. Wolf knocks and announces his presence, but no one responds. He concludes that the woman inside refuses to speak to him, a revelation that surprises Sensei, as it seems Wolf, too, is in pursuit of his beloved. Since the woman won't open the door, Wolf resigns himself to speak his heart from outside. He promises that he will return alive from the war and do things differently. Finding it rude to eavesdrop on such a personal moment, Sensei decides to leave. The next day at Castle Gelb, the king is informed that enemy forces are attacking from the eastern Gelb dunes. Tama offers his strength to the dwarf king, but the king, confidently dismissing the danger, tells them to relax, assuring his guests that he will swiftly deal with the fallen angels. After putting on his helmet and leading his soldiers outside, Doran joins forces with Wolf to lead the final battle, which they hope will secure Gelb's victory over the fallen angel of desolation. On the front lines, the dwarves rely on their brute strength to hold off the advancing lizardmen, while the Storm Mage hurls spells from a distance, making them a formidable team. The battle appears to be going exceptionally well, and Wolf is confident they are once again crushing their enemies. However, Usha catches Wolf's attention, pointing out a mysterious figure approaching from the west. A terrifying creature emits a powerful beam from its mouth, destroying part of the front line. Usha recognizes it as Jade the Black Dragon, a legendary beast once under the control of the Demon King. But Wolf remains undeterred, recalling that he has slain many dragons before. He readies his staff for a spell, while Doran observes that it's not the Angel of Desolation riding the dragon. Still, Wolf is unconcerned, declaring that whoever it is, they will be reduced to dust. As the dragon nears, Wolf pauses when he sees who is riding it. The angel descends, visibly happy to reunite with her master. Caught off guard, Wolf is easily struck by a spell from his opponent, who lifts him with dark claws. Usha tries to intervene but is weakened by the touch of the claws. The fallen angel of desolation then reassures everyone that she will kill them all soon enough, but first she must deal with her master. A bewildered Doran asks what's happening, prompting Usha to gather her strength and urge the Dwarf King to retreat immediately. She informs the others that Wolf has been taken southwest, likely to the Dirtin Temple. However, Usha doesn't know who the girl was, only recalling that she called Wolf her master. Frustrated, Doran punches the wall just as the lizardmen advance. Fearing that the castle will fall, the dwarven warriors grow uneasy, while Sensei tells Milos that Familus' heart is broken over her master's danger. Sensei then asks what a man should do when he sees a woman cry, causing Milos to snap and dash off. Returning to the area where Wolf had previously been speaking to a woman, Sensei assumed she might have information about Wolf's past that could help. He knocks on the door, requesting to ask some questions about the Bishop of Weiss Cathedral, and is surprised when an elderly lady answers. Meanwhile, in front of the Dritten Temple, Wolf's former pupil reminisces about the meaningful moments she shared with her master there. Startled, Wolf recognizes her as Yuriko, his former apprentice. Soon, the temple's soldiers arrive to protect Wolf, surrounding Yuriko. She insists that she is not alone and that her skills blossomed under her master's guidance, as she extends her dark claws toward the soldiers. Usha deduces that Yuriko must have been Wolf's apprentice, noting that he had once been passionate about training others before he turned to drink. Usha asks Doran to send soldiers to rescue Wolf, but the king says he cannot spare any due to the siege. Tama and Annette volunteer for the mission, though they aren't sure where Sensei is to confirm the plan. Out of nowhere, Sensei walks into the room, carrying a woman in his arms. Tama tries to understand what's happening, while Annette marvels at how Sensei seems to always end up surrounded by women. Regardless, the team gears up for the mission and receives new equipment from the King of Gelb. Sensei grumbles that the item he requested still hasn't arrived, and the dwarf explains that it's confusing the artisans. Sensei mutters about dwarves always boasting about being the best craftsmen in the universe, while Yusha reminds everyone to focus on the mission. Nur agrees, though he's unsure how they'll cross the desert on foot. At that moment, Toru, the chief of the hunters, arrives. Tama prepares for a fight, but Toru hasn't come to brawl. Since Chief Nur changed his life, Toru gave up crime, started a bus company for day work, and runs an orphanage at night. To prove it, he cast the Lucifer's hammer spell on a tiger in the desert, transforming it into a bus. Without asking questions, the group boards the vehicle. However, Toru stops Sensei from boarding, still holding a grudge because Sensei killed his beloved scorpion, Chavez. He speeds off, leaving Sensei behind. Faced with this, Sensei strokes the coffin fragment he carries, remarking that it's the only reliable mode of transport he has left. After all, Wolf had told him to stay out of the way, and Sensei intends to do just that. Yet the elderly lady pleads with Sensei to take her to Wolf, causing him to reconsider. Though weary of people chasing after their loved ones, Sensei admits that such quests are the seeds of every great story.
The rest of the group had already arrived, and Usha warned Tama not to touch the wounded elves, as traces of magic still lingered on them. The cleric assured the group that she would heal them later. Because of this display of power, Usha confirmed that the malicious girl was nearby. As they advanced into the temple, the group encountered a scene very different from what they were used to when they met Wolf. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by a weak and apprehensive demeanor. Usha demanded to know which demon was responsible. The girl introduced herself as Yuriko, a former student of Wolf, now known as the Fallen Angel of Greed. She warned them that this was a matter between apprentice and master and should not be interfered with. To prevent any interruption, Yuriko summoned dozens of scouts to destroy the intruders. Wolf pleaded with his former student to stop, but she coldly reminded him that he had once taught her never to hesitate before an enemy. The team fought valiantly against the skeletons, managing to take down most of them. However, more units continued to appear on the battlefield. Initially, the fight was under control, but as time passed, the combatants grew tired and began to be surrounded. Yuriko declared that this would continue until all her enemies fell, as that was her desire. Her power was fueled by greed. The sea of skeletons swarmed them, and Usha was struck down, finding herself face to face with Yuriko. Usha asked what had happened between the girl and Wolf, remembering the mage as a passionate and skilled teacher with no reason for Yuriko to hate him. Years ago, when Yuriko used her magic on a flower and accidentally killed it, Wolf had told her she was trying hard, but suspected she wasn't suited for combat. He assured her that not all transfers needed to face the Demon King. Some could live normal lives. However, Yuriko disliked the idea of not fighting the Dark Lord, given the threat he posed to the world. Wolf praised her determination and assured her that her strength would bloom one day. Yuriko recounted this to Usha, recalling how Wolf had been a great teacher and how she cherished even the breaks they shared. During one of those breaks, Yuriko had seen a red ribbon at the market, but left it behind when her master called. Everything was fine until a new girl arrived. Wolf's attitude toward Yuriko changed completely as he shifted his focus to teaching the prodigy. Yuriko, left on the sidelines, pushed herself harder in her training, desperate to earn Wolf's attention, but all she saw was Wolf praising the new girl, declaring her the true heroine destined to defeat the Dark Lord. He had been waiting for someone like her all along, and that triggered something in Yuriko, awakening her powers. On the day Yuriko's powers awakened, she dragged the new girl into her shadows. Had that not happened, Yuriko's powers might never have surfaced. She believed her teacher had taught her the right way. After finishing her story, Yuriko destroyed her skeletons and confessed to having killed an innocent girl, consumed by her own greed. That's why she was no longer human, and all that remained was to fall as far as possible. As she spoke, a monstrous figure emerged from her shadows. Wolf yelled for everyone to flee, but Yuriko declared that they would all die there. At that moment, Sensei burst onto the scene with a wild cart, crashing through the temple wall and freeing Wolf. After struggling to control the cart, Sensei remarked that he had only asked for a self-propelled bed, but the dwarves had outdone themselves. He stepped down and approached Yuriko, calling for Milos, who appeared with an elderly woman, leaving both Wolf and Yuriko in shock. The fallen angel of greed recognized her as Hikari. Sensei explained that he had finished writing the story of Yuriko's younger sister, and now it was time to tell Yuriko's tale. He revealed that Hikari had told him everything on the way there. Yuriko and Hikari had been part of a close-knit family of 3. Yuriko had cared for her younger sister, who'd been sick from a young age, as the illness worsened daily. Hikari added that her older sister had almost missed starting high school because of her caregiving. Yuriko told her to stop talking, but Sensei, visibly moved by Yuriko's kindness, remarked that he thought she was a saint. In response, Yuriko summoned more skeletons, commanding them to point their swords at the rider, who seemed delighted by the scene. The group intervened, quickly taking down the skeletons and clearing the way for Sensei to continue. As a writer, he declared that he could not die until the story he had come to tell was finished. Hikari begged Yuriko to stop, but Yuriko revealed that she was far from the kind older sister they remembered. She confessed that she had always hated Hikari for stealing her youth. When Yuriko arrived in this world, she thought her life would finally begin. But when Hikari appeared again and took everything away, Yuriko decided that her sister would never ruin her life again. Greed, Yuriko revealed, was her true nature, and her only desire was to possess everything she wanted. Intrigued by the unfolding events, Sensei approached Yuriko and asked what she truly desired from all of this. Losing her patience, Yuriko attacked him with a scythe conjured by the monster from her shadow. Wolf intervened just in time to shield the rider, but he was struck in the process. Yuriko's magic left its mark on his arm, draining a significant portion of his life force. Seeing the damage she had inflicted on her former master, Yuriko felt guilt for the first time. Wolf apologized for his past actions, admitting that he hadn't realized the harm he caused. Sensei, interrupting the emotional moment, reminded the elf that he had no role in the love story Sensei intended to write. With that, he turned back to Yuriko, the former apprentice of the Storm Mage, and pressed her once again to reveal her true desires. In response, Yuriko summoned more skeletons, but even with a sword wound, Sensei didn't back down. He explained that as a writer, he wouldn't stop until he uncovered her real feelings. Hearing this, Yuriko withdrew her skeletons, shocking everyone around her. She then revealed what she had been hiding for years. On the day of her graduation, when the cherry blossoms were in full bloom, Yuriko watched people outside her house living their lives normally. She reminded her father that it was her special day, but he was fully focused on her younger sister, giving Hikari a ribbon for her hair. Afterward, he returned to work, telling Yuriko to take care of her sister. Left alone with Hikari once again, Yuriko prepared herself for the day, wearing her sister's ribbon as if her father had been proud of her. Later that night, when she returned home, Yuriko realized something terrible had happened. Rushing inside, her father slapped her, accusing her of nearly causing Hikari's death while she was out enjoying herself. When she opened the door and saw her sister in a dreadful state, Yuriko was stunned, unable to react, as her father comforted the younger girl and ripped the ribbon from Yuriko's hair. Devastated, she wandered the streets without purpose until she was hit by a truck, believing she had been treated like a ghost her whole life. All Yuriko ever wanted was to be seen. She thought her desire for recognition had nearly killed her sister. To make matters worse, in this new world, Yuriko ended Hikari's life. Overcome with emotion, she kneeled and cried black tears, convinced she was a terrible and selfish person. Sensei knelt beside her, lifting her face and gently telling her that everyone in the world desires to be seen. And this didn't make her selfish, just a kind girl with her own peculiar way of thinking. At that moment, Hikari embraced her sister and apologized for everything she had caused. Hikari then asked if Yuriko knew why she had been summoned to this world. Recalling the past, Hikari explained how she had woken up one morning after her condition had worsened, only to see the ribbon on the floor with Yuriko nowhere to be found. Trapped in her room, alone with her illness, Hikari lost hope when her sister disappeared. Even now, as an old woman, Hikari had come to this world for a chance to see her sister again. Hearing this, Wolf realized his failure as a mentor. When he declared Hikari the savior of Zoberberg, Yuriko had rushed to confirm that the girl was truly her sister. In tears, Yuriko had vowed that Hikari would never suffer again. As time passed, Hikari asked Wolf to allow her sister to live freely, explaining that she had always felt guilty for stealing Yurio's life and wanted her to be happy. The writer chronicling this story revealed that the truth was, the two sisters had always loved each other, even if they hadn't realized it. As these words were spoken, the pages of the book glowed, enveloping the sisters. Wolf recognized this as the power the Pope had spoken of. Sensei remarked that such a beautiful love story should not be completed by his hand. He tore out one of the pages, which destroyed Yuriko's monstrous shadow, rejuvenated Hikari, and healed Wolf and the elves affected by Yurio's rage. Asha informed them that the sisters had to return to their original world. Yuriko apologized to everyone for the harm she had caused and thanked her master for giving her a moment of youth. With everything in its rightful place, the two sisters were sent back to where they came from. Hikari woke up in her old bed, and her sister opened the window, saying she had had a long dream. Yuriko tied the ribbon in Hikari's hair and asked what the dream was about. Hikari hesitated, thinking her sister might laugh. But Yuriko insisted she wanted to hear the story. After all, they had plenty of time. So Hikari began to tell her about a distant world, one very different from the one they lived in now. Back at Gelb Fortress, King Doran once again leads his troops against the Lizardmen, successfully driving the invaders away. The dwarves celebrate the victory, but the king reminds them that true victory will only be achieved when Wolf, a nearby fallen angel, watches over the desert. Meanwhile, the Pope is informed that one of the transferred individuals has been sent far from Samstag, thanks to the power described in Usher's report. The Pope celebrates this, believing the wielder of such power is the savior of their world. Back with the protagonist, Wolf is relieved that everything is under control and announces it's time to return to Gelb Castle. Tama chuckles, pointing out that Wolf did absolutely nothing and now wants to take charge. Nur tells Sensei they're heading back to the castle, but Sensei is distracted, focused on something else. He suddenly realizes there's an unexpected guest. Without warning, part of the ceiling collapses, signaling the arrival of a fallen angel in the temple. Sengoku, having returned to his duties after Yuriko's departure, is determined to resolve the situation personally. Tama worries the enemy looks formidable. But Wolf is excited. The Angel of Desolation's appearance gives the elf a chance to prove his power, rather than returning to Gelb without even fighting. Confidently, Wolf summons a Sturmendrangs, certain the powerful storm will end the battle. However, the angel warns that the magic is ineffective against its armor. Toru charges at the angel, hoping to overwhelm it, but is easily repelled. Tama then invokes the divine beast's supreme technique, winging a direct hit. Though Sengoku compliments her technique, he points out that her inexperience is telling. Regretfully, he says he must kill the demi-beast, seeing no other choice. He summons his sword and moves to strike, but Nur steps in, shattering Sengoku's weapon. Afterward, Sengoku advises the group to hone their skills and leaves without further explanation. Overjoyed by the unexpected rescue, Tama hugs Nur tightly. Annette, Toru, and Wolf join in celebrating the heroic moment. Once the celebrations end, they prepare to return to Gelb Castle, where the dwarves are eager to continue the festivities. Usher remarks to Wolf that she's glad the transferred sisters had a happy ending. But the mage remains doubtful. He believes they weren't happy in their original world, and aren't truly happy here either. To him, they are just another case of being summoned for the convenience of the Halcyon World Church, only to face more misery in a different universe. Reflecting on this, the sorcerer questions whether the church's methods are justified. Later that night, a mysterious fallen angel hums softly as she walks through the battlefield, the desert sands littered with the bodies of lizards and dwarves. She continues her journey toward Gelb Castle. Inside the fortress, Sensei encourages Milos to be braver in pursuing his desires. He urges Milos to talk to Famlos. The small creature approaches his beloved, offering her a bouquet of flowers, though her response is less than enthusiastic. After the rejection, Sensei takes Milos for a walk around the fortress, consoling him and reminding him not to lose heart. Sometimes, no matter how much we try, love remains unreciprocated. Suddenly, the girl who had been humming passes by without a word. Sensei turns, feeling uneasy, and realizes the girl is Seiken. She turns around and reveals her face, telling him it's good to see him again. Sensei is stunned, filled with questions, but Seiken speaks first, saying they need to continue where they left off, dying together. His initial thought is to jump from the corridor, ensuring their deaths. However, to his surprise, Seiken lets go of his hand and comments on how much he has changed since they last met. She notices a light in his eyes, and that he seemed excited. He's no longer the same Sensei she once knew. Desperate, Sensei tries to convince her that he hasn't changed at all, but she remains unconvinced. Just then, Tama and her friends arrive to check on him, and Seiken becomes certain that Sensei has found something in this world worth living for. She declares that she can no longer stay with him and leaves. The next day, the group heads to Rotos, the master of the blacksmith guild, to thank him for the equipment they received. Yet Sensei can't stop thinking about Seiken. He believes she misunderstood him when she said he was happy in this world. In reality, he is as miserable as ever and still wishes to die by her side. Overwhelmed, he takes a heavy dose of sedatives and passes out. Meanwhile, Nur asks the blacksmith to inspect his sword, the very one that broke the fallen angel's blade. After examining it, Rotos tells him the sword is too large for him now, but one day he might grow into it. Just then, Sensei's coffin, like vehicle, begins emitting smoke uncontrollably. Rotos warns that the machine still needs adjustments before it causes a serious accident. Thrilled by the idea of the vehicle being the thing that kills him, Setsi jumps behind the wheel, crashes through the gate, and speeds off. Nur, Annette, and Tama chase after him frantically. Back at the fallen angel's castle, Sengoku examines his broken sword. Another fallen angel observes that Sengoku has always been melancholic, but today he seems oddly content. Seiken also appears in good spirits, something Sengoku makes sure to point out. During a meeting with all the members, the wine enthusiast points out that there were once 7 of them, but now only 5 remain. He starts questioning what can be done to prevent further losses. Seiken remarks that the man spends all his time isolated in the castle, watching the world from afar, and that someone as lazy as him has no right to exist. He chuckles in agreement and then asks how her meeting with the man she loved went. Seiken replies that Sensei has the power to change the world and that he's just as wonderful as ever, stroking the red ribbon on her wrist. She declares that this is what makes the writer worthy of her. The fallen angel replies that he wouldn't expect anything less from his proud queen. Meanwhile, Sensei's group has no idea where he's gone. A worker notices they're lost and informs them that they're in the village of Held, the last stop of the hero before he went straight to the Demon King's castle after resting here. He also mentions the famous statue of the village hero fighting the Dark Lord. Tama comments that the statue makes it look like the hero is running away from the beast, which irritates the worker. He corrects her, saying the hero was facing the creature, until an idiot with a shady face and a strange vehicle crashed into the statue. Tama quickly realizes it must have been Sensei and promises to go after him. However, the worker informs them it won't be possible, as the driver rushed inside the sanctuary at the village's edge, which is the only path to the forbidden land of Orange, home of the Fairy Queen. He reminds them that only those who pass the trials can enter Orange, and it's unlikely Sensei will succeed. Meanwhile, Sensei speeds through the sanctuary in his coffin buggy. A deep, threatening voice informs him that if he wishes to gain the Fairy Queen's protection, he must undergo the trials ahead. Suffering from a headache caused by the voice, he gets back into the coffin. The first trial, a test of strength, appears with a giant monster blocking his path. However, the beast is mercilessly run over and left behind. The test intelligence doesn't even show up, as it and the trial of spirit are also run over in the same fashion. The worker explains to the group that Sensei must pass these 3 trials to reach Orange, a feat only the hero had achieved before, earning the Fairy Queen's blessing before heading to the Demon King's castle. Annette asks what happens if Sensei passes the trials, but Nur and Tama doubt he's capable of it. At that moment, Sensei is pulled into a portal at the end of the trials. He wonders if he's finally died and reached Paradise City, but 2 twin fairies appear and explain the situation. Ilulu, the blue one, says the man is an orange, while Solelu, the pink one, orders him to bow before the queen. Sensei accidentally drops some pills on the giant queen while trying to retrieve them, causing Solelu to fly into a rage. However, the queen calms her down and introduces herself as Obrys, the one who bestows blessings on those who reach this place, because the fairies desire peace, and this blessing is a way to achieve that peace in the world. Obrys then asks Sensei what's more important to save the world, trust in others or absolute power. After some reflection, Sensei chooses a third option, saying the person I trusted left me. So this time, I just want to die at all costs. Solelu protests, urging him to take the question seriously. However, Sensei, tired of people obsessed with choices, replies that world peace means nothing to him, now that the one he loved is gone. Ilulu begins to doubt their judgment of him, but the queen isn't so sure. She notes that Sensei possesses the protection of Esh, the spirit of the world tree. Curious, Obrys asks what blessing he received. He responds that it made his pills infinite, tossing several more at her as an offering. The twin fairies want to send him back, calling him a fraud, but Obrys mentions that a man once called a hero came to this land, received her blessing, and yet still failed to bring peace, plunging Zauberberg into even greater chaos. The elves of the north, known as the Helsahan, watch over the world, while 7 humans from another realm defeated the ruler of the dragon race. Now, beings from other worlds have arrived, blurring the lines between good and evil. Oberys believes this world is no longer meant for those who make righteous choices, and that Sensei's arrival here was not a mistake. It was the land that called him. With that, Oberys touches Sensei, telling him that he will be reunited with his beloved. At the end of his journey, she doesn't ask him to save the world, but rather to live longer and continue his adventure. She then gives him a whistle to use if he ever finds himself in trouble and sends him back home. Meanwhile, Sensei's group wonders if he'll even want to continue his journey after being rejected by the woman he loves. Suddenly, like a meteor, Sensei appears in his vehicle, crashing into the statue once again, leaving it in an even worse state. After thinking it over, Sensei blows the whistle, asking for help to fix the mess he made. The fairy is furious and refuses to help with such trivial tasks, but her queen contacts her, insisting she must fulfill the request, making Solelu even more irate. Back in Held, Usher complains that Sensei and the others left without saying goodbye and asks if Wolf shouldn't have taken the rider to the Pope. However, Wolf believes things will unfold as they should. As for the Pope, he believes the world expects something from Sensei. While the Pope thinks it's peace, the fallen angel master believes it's chaos. In any case, Oberys emphasizes that the fate of the world rests on him. Glancing at the ribbon tied around his wrist, Sensei calls his friends to continue their journey. This brings an end to Season 1. Thanks for watching my recap.